So what do you think?
In that last slide is the distinction between care and act. Is care is more the motivation behind it, and act is the actually doing. Not that was something
Yeah,
because
the
I think of
care.
care and I think of take food to someone or something, but
Yep.
you're talking about it more of motivation and
Yeah, I would say the act of taking someone food is an action. What motivates me to do that is how much I care. And
yeah,
so I would see it as a motivation or an expression of my heart's interest in another person, and that's really the empathy piece. That's the human part that says I'm going to love and be an expression of loving, having interest in, being curious about other human beings. Those are all functions of care, and then our actions are those things that we actually do or say to people
It,
that express that understanding and that care.
immediate reaction from me is just, oh, I believe everything you said, but I'm not living that experientially,
Right?
and so, okay, I want to coach these other, whether in some kind of formal class or just in the meta discussion, everyday discussion with people. I want to present these kind of concepts, this kind of relational ideology, but I'm just listening to it, realizing how little I am living it experientially. Not even because there's conflict, but just because there's reality, and this doesn't happen naturally. You don't think this way naturally.
Right.
So that a little bit of conviction, and a little bit of just okay, there's some train the trainers here for sure, that we've got to live it too before we can really have a right to tell other people.
Yeah, and I think that the culture that we create is one of the reasons I suggested that book, the Great Commandment Principle. Obviously, there's great stuff in marriage, and for some people, that's as far as it goes. But when we can start to create culture in churches or small groups, even in very small, rapidly reproducing kind of church planting movement or disciple making movement, kind of house churches, if we begin to build this DNA in and it becomes normalized, it really does have an explosive possibility, because what happens
Yeah.
is you get healthier
Yeah.
and you're more free to love. You have to break out of the old patterns and form new ones for sure, but boy does it create life.
There's a ton of applications in business too. That's what I mean, it might not, I don't know where everyone's at, but for me right now, I'm in the middle of hiring a bunch of people, and I was just talking to a girl, and we're having this conversation about culture and about performance reviews and feedback and trust, but it's all the same stuff.
Yep.
It's this basic idea that if you're thinking of it from the perspective of diversity initiatives and good standards, it doesn't have life behind it. But if you're thinking of it from the perspective of these people are all eternal souls, and I care about them, and I care about this story, I can't talk about God, but I'm thinking about him every day, because it's thinking through his eyes that's going to make me a good manager. It just totally resonates with me. It's kind of a little bit of the world that I'm in right now, more than
Sure.
even our stuff. But it's like, yeah, basically we have to live the gospel in every random aspect of life, even the ones where it's not acceptable and kosher to talk about it specifically.
Yeah, and as I've done some pre-marriage counseling with people who have either been atheist or at least not biblically, not any kind of biblical worldview at all, in terms of who Creator God might be, if it's a he, so just maybe a higher force kind of person. But I've just felt real free, and I know this isn't how you believe, and this is where you're at, but my worldview says this, and so that's how I operate, because I believe that we were made, we were intended, and if they want to ascribe that to the universe as a starting point, I'm okay with that, as long as they understand there's a design intention of how we're supposed to treat each other, and what will ultimately satisfy.
Yeah, there's a lot to this, getting people to see the heart of what you believe, because they seem to be so inoculated from the truth of what you believe. They have some kind of mental block, so they have to actually, it resonates at some heart level, and then the scales fall off.
Right.
So.
Great thoughts. Anybody else have feedback, questions, observations?
I think I forget who it was at the beginning, Ben or Cole, just that concept of oneness. You know, we talk about being made in the image of God and reflecting his image in different ways. And um, at least in my circles or my experience within church, the concept of of oneness is not one that's talked about. And I know you said your image, you know, it's just really simple, uh, but it speaks a lot. And actually, Nathan has been helping my wife and I. Summer, we've recently started some marriage counseling. Some people that reached out to us, and okay, we're not perfect in all this, but my God, what else do we have to share with you but this? And so we're gonna try it. And you know, you talk about that thing with, you know, create your own paradise. And you know, you meet people who are like, no, I'd be totally okay with there not being any people around, maybe because they've never experienced the idea of oneness and they're skeptical. And it was kind of a spirit of the heart, you know. At the end, the guy was just like, well, I don't think this is gonna work. Like, ah. But that idea of oneness, that picture is, it's incredible. And then to extend that to this is how the world will know, man, it gives it even greater purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, and occasionally there's going to be people for whatever reason, sometimes extremely introverted. I would say probably as a young man before I came to Jesus, I would have said, yeah, I'm perfectly okay not having people around. But that was from a place of hurt. I'd been hurt by so many people. Okay, so the choices are stay with people and get hurt or be by myself. I'll be by myself. So sometimes there's not another alternative in people's minds of actually being in a place where you're cared for or known or enjoy relationship. And that's probably where I would have interpreted all relationship as just painful and toxic, except for my dog. Yeah, if God would have laid that out before me pre-Jesus, I would have said, I get to have a Labrador? Yeah, I'm good. Let's move. That's perfect. That's all I need for a helpmate. You saying something, Tom? There you go.
Yeah, there I am. Yeah, earlier you gave a definition. I think it was for oneness, but correct me if it was something else. So,
Okay.
known, be known, care, and act.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's it. Yep. Oneness. Yep.
So when the aspect about being known, you made some sort of emphasis about that kind of being in our court.
Yep.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that, what that looks like?
Well, there are certain human assumptions. So if you and I, let's just talk real here. If you and I want to experience oneness as brothers, you can tell me about yourself, and so I can know you. But if I'm going to be known, I have to communicate that to you. And in order to communicate that, I have to know something about myself. And so I have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to express who I actually am. And so I could pose and go, look at all the great things I've done. And, you know, I don't experience this and be in this posture of trying to make myself be puffed up in your sight. Or I could say, no, I really want you to know me. Here's my hangups, brother. This is what I struggle with. This is where I'm going to need your care.
Yeah.
You know, and the language, I know you were off gallivanting around celebrating with your bride last week. I don't know if you got a chance to watch the video, but the relational language that we're going to next gives us a framework for how we express that, how we discover ourselves, and that's the 10 relational needs as a primary tool. We'll get to that next week. But that's my responsibility. If I don't really actually know myself, if I can't express who I am, what my highs and lows and who I really am, if I can't tell you that, then you can't really know me. And so whatever relationship we have is based on fallacy or shallowness rather than depth of you actually being able to see me naked, metaphorically.
I gotcha. Thank you for that. And that metaphor.
Yeah, only metaphor. No nakedness here. Your thoughts, feedback, questions?
The visual that you presented of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in one bubble and us, I think that was really good to see that, oh yeah, these do not look the same. This is one independent thing down here, and it is not a clear picture or reflection. So,
Yeah, relationship is so central to what the church is. Most of the New Testament commands you couldn't even obey if you were by yourself, if you weren't in some form of fellowship or relationship. Most of the New Testament commands require being a part of a living body.
I guess one thing, another thing that stood out was one of the last things you talked about, Pat, is when you define oneness, and you said this is how we're designed to live, and when we don't, we feel alone. And I don't know, for me, I can really relate to that. That's something that has proven to be true, where I think me just maybe not even knowing myself, and through some things finding out like, oh yeah, I am totally like that, or that is why I feel this way. And then to be able to first do that and put that out there, and then have 1, 2, 3 people be able to say, okay, we see that about you. We're going to, help in that, or give you what you need. It does begin to remove the aloneness, because I know for me, I have a family and was married and it was great, but I felt very alone at times, and often express that. So I really, really appreciate that.
And I think I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability in that, Justin. I think most of us, to one degree or another, whether we have a definition for or not, have some sense that I don't feel very connected, I don't feel very cared for. And as men, we can either get angry or find hobbies or stuff things, but women tend to be much more intuitive when they're experiencing that. When they're not connected, it's just the way God made their minds and their participation and spirits. Typically, again, that there is no only male, female, but a typical trend would be women would be far more discontent without that sense of connection or being known. And so when our wives say that to us, it is a gift to us to go, oh, okay, yeah, they're speaking. What God would want for us is to be more connected and to feel that sense of being cared for and known.
Right. And I lament, for so long, because here's my awesome wife trying to be like, well, what do you need? Wanting to help. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what I need. Maybe not to have that question asked, because I don't know the answer to it.
Yeah, that's what most men think. Just stop asking me, I'll be fine.
Right,
That's not,
and it's not doing her any favors, Yeah.
right. Well, you do have an awesome wife. I'm glad she kept asking you those questions.
I could relate, I guess, Pat, to your, I don't know if you talked about upbringing, but even talking about going off that paradise illustration, and then if there were not people, but God was there, there's like this, I have this innate recoil to even hinting that that's not enough, that even if God is there, and and so it's good to wrestle through that and even see it in the text there, that it says it is not good, and he said it was not good. And so I just more to just share my own thought process going through that is like, yeah, I can have an initial kind of pushback against that. Just like, don't even say the word, you know, then, you know, but
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You and me, bro, both brothers. But the first time I heard that, I just kind of looked squinty eyed and go, "You what?"
Yeah.
That was completely not the way my head would have been conditioned to think up until that point. And next week we'll dive into that a lot more, this idea of God's design and what he was trying to accomplish with that design.
Yeah.
It wasn't a mistake.
Yep.
And in some ways, maybe a way that may soften that a little bit, Cole, so it's not quite as troubling, is he has a design that fundamentally he is enough, because he created the things that are
exactly.
He created the system that should care for us. So he's not lacking. He just never intended himself to be the answer, personally the answer for every need.
Right. Yeah, I was thinking about it like it'd be kind of silly to say I shouldn't have to say that I need food to be alive. Like God should be enough, and it's like but he's the one who provides the food and has designed my body to get nutrients from eating, and I can do that all for his glory and know that he's the one who provided it. Anyways, I was just kind of trying to think through similar ways of thinking about that. But
yeah, cool. Any other feedback, thoughts? Have any of you gotten the books, the recommended reading, The Other Half of Church and The Great Commandment Principle? I do think those would be helpful to be reading along if you possibly can. I think they put a framework.
Pat, I might have missed something. I don't think I'd heard about those.
Okay, I will send you a
email
link
or
to them.
something.
Yep, I'll send you a link. Anybody else need a link to those?
Yeah, please. The Great Commandment Principle, and what was the other one?
The Other Half of Church.
The Other Half of Church. Okay.
Yeah. It deals with the relational or right side of our brain application. It's done by a brain science guy, Wilder, and small group leader guy.
I think they were on one of your initial emails. I think you had links to them down there. So if you guys still have those initial emails that Pat sent out, you might have them.
I'll resend that email to everybody that needs it. Yeah, the Great Commandment Principle, you can find it other places, but I don't think it's typically on Amazon. They have, that's from Ferguson's Intimate Life or Relational Values website. So. What else you want to talk about?
Let's see. I feel like there's certain times where within the church, some like theological or different, I mean, even COVID, like those things, like either theological differences from backgrounds, like people being from different background denominations, or even things around COVID with different ideas around restrictions and things like that. It feels like that has, those conversations bring to head more tension than I would like. And it's like, yes, I want unity. And it's sometimes feels like it's okay, we're just going to agree to disagree and not talk about these things anymore. but that doesn't feel like full unity.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, in our fallenness and in difference of conviction, I think we can have a high esteem and care for one another. It's when we see those different theological convictions as the enemy. And for me, I think it's most important that we settle the really important doctrines. And I believe the really important doctrines relate to who and what. Who is God? What has he done? Who are we? What are we to do? And then the how, why, when doctrines tend to be where we tend to argue a lot. And so if we can agree that if we're fundamentally saying that the sufficiency of Scripture and the supremacy of Christ, and that's the result of our unity, and we can have a high esteem and allow the Spirit to work in different groups or in different people, that's enough of a unity for me. Now, in a small group or a missional community or house church or something, you probably need a little more unity if you're going to function in a plan of action or certain kind of ministries. But I don't know if we have to express unity. I don't know if every jot and tittle has to be the same. It's just where do we put the Scriptures and where do we put the person and work of Jesus? And if those two things are in place, then I think we have a pretty good foundation for expressing unity and oneness and allowing the diversity of gift and expression to flourish. And sometimes that comes out denominationally or in a bent of missional focus, or how somebody would go after reaching a certain people group or whatever it might be. There may be philosophical things. And I think we spend a lot of time striving to be united in every little thing, and practically I think there's just little circles. So we can be in unity as you and Cole, well, actually you share kind of at least a real estate now, but your brother and Steph, you don't see everything exactly the same, and yet you can be in fellowship and unity. You have your household, though, you and your wife, it's much more important that you be tightly united because you're operating in a more intimate setting. So,
And so those conversations, like let's say that you and I are in the same church, and we have, is it me expressing to you, hey, I care about you, and I see your viewpoint, and I'm excited that God gave you that principle or that conviction, and so we don't need to go all the way down the road, to try to get this hashed out. Like it's okay for us to have those differences and keep moving forward on knowing that the who and the what are there. Is that what our conversation looks like?
For me, it does. So I think the COVID thing is a great picture. You have people who mask and people who are opposed to masking. Well, you can mask out of fear, and that wouldn't be faith, or you could not mask out of anger, and that wouldn't be faith. So our call to each other is to walk by faith. Now, at some point, just for practical reasons, if someone says my mission is to work exclusively in rescuing sex trafficked women, okay, well, practically that probably isn't going to fit in our little congregation to have you want to be partnered with, think about, talk about, work on that area of redemption all the time. Well, you probably need to go be with people that are making that their ministry focus, and we can release each other and bless each other to go do what God is calling us as individuals to do, and not have that judgment or that disdain. We're responsible to walk by faith, and I believe to commend those who call on the name of Jesus and uphold his, honor his word, honor his name, honor his word. And that's, to me, that's enough, but it may not be enough to be in close fellowship, because there may be other reasons to political activism or whatever it might be. There's lots of convictions on what we should be doing. And I just think we can grant each other that. It's one of the things that came out for me, perspectives, is God has used so many diverse means that I just got to relax. He can take care of his church. He can sort out the fish. Our job is to catch them. Anything else? Okay. Well, did you have something, Mark?
Yeah, I was just gonna do like maybe a little bit of a follow-up to what Justin said earlier about just being known and even the differences between men and women. I think the ladies tend to know themselves much better than guys do. And one aspect of obviously being known is to know yourself first before you can make yourself known, just at a heart level. And I think that's been a challenge for me. And it's just like an ongoing trying to dig in there and really know what's going on in my own heart so I can be known, and share that. So it's something to keep in mind, I think, as guys especially.
Yep, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay. Well, if other things jump up as you're reflecting on this, meditating on any of this, we'll open up next week with a little dialogue. So save those for then, and we can talk more. Hopefully, it won't take me 5-6 days to edit this one and get it posted. If you want to review it or pass it on to somebody, and in general, if you do not want, I don't know where this is going to end up going, and so I just keep telling people, if you don't want your name out there, it might be good to only put your first name, because these could get passed around where we wouldn't have the same level of control. Right now they're just on YouTube, but I don't know where they might go. So anyway, just want to give you that security heads up. Be careful. So all right, well, enjoyed being with you guys. Look forward to next week, and thanks for bearing with and having great questions and thinking deeply about it. And if anybody does have stuff you just want to kick around, I'm happy to respond via email or phone or whatever too.
So this last, the first week's call, was that the YouTube link you sent out? Is that where I can find that? All right, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Pat. Appreciate your time.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Pat.
Bye-bye.
Pat,
Yes.
is there anything in your